She nursed a cowboy back to health, unaware he was the millionaire behind the town's only hospital. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The wind that night swept across the Texas plains like a restless spirit. The highway shimmered under sheets of rain, and lightning flashed over the silhouette of a small rural hospital. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed softly, reflecting off the sterile white walls. It was well past midnight when Nurse Clara Evans rushed through the emergency doors, her ponytail damp, her scrubs creased from a double shift. "Clara, you are still here?" the night receptionist called out. "Could not sleep," she said, adjusting her badge. "You said an ambulance was coming?" Before the woman could answer, the sound of tires screeched outside. The doors burst open, and two paramedics wheeled in a gurney. A man lay unconscious, soaked in rain and blood. His hat had fallen off, revealing sandy hair matted with mud. His denim jacket was torn, his boots scuffed with dust and blood. "Car accident on the old highway," one paramedic said quickly. "No identification, no phone, nothing but this." He handed Clara a small silver lighter engraved with the initials RH. Clara took it, staring at the faint engraving. The letters caught the light like a secret waiting to be told. "Pulse weak, but steady," she said. "Get him to trauma room 2. They moved fast. The machines beeped, the heart monitor steadied, and Clara worked quietly with calm precision. She cleaned the wounds on his chest, stitched a deep gash near his shoulder, and pressed a warm towel to his forehead. When she peeled away the ruined denim, she noticed something unusual beneath the rough exterior. A man built like he had known hard work, not wealth. Yet there was something refined in the way his hands looked, the shape of his nails, the faint trace of cologne beneath the smell of blood. Dr. Harris entered, tightening the strap of his gloves. "He is lucky he made it here alive. Head trauma, possible concussion. Keep him under 24-hour observation." "Yes, doctor," Clara replied. When the doctor left, the room fell quiet again, except for the rhythmic hum of the monitor. Clara stood for a moment, watching the man breathe. The storm outside raged, but inside, his chest rose and fell like a fragile promise. "Who are you, mister?" she whispered. Her voice barely filled the space, but the question lingered. She took a blanket from the cabinet and gently covered him. As she tucked it beneath his arm, she noticed a faint scar running down his forearm, a clean surgical line, old and deliberate. Not the kind of scar a ranch hand would carry. The lights flickered once, the wind howled outside, and Clara found herself staring at his face again. Despite the bruises and blood, there was something noble about it, the kind of strength that did not come from pride, but from endurance. She checked his chart once more. No name, no record, no address. Just a stranger who had fallen from the storm into her care. It was almost dawn when she finished the paperwork. She placed the silver lighter on the bedside table, next to the IV monitor, and turned to leave. Then, as she reached the door, the faintest sound stopped her, the softest exhale, like a whisper. She turned back, heart thudding. His fingers twitched. Only once, barely there, but enough to make her breath catch. "Hey," she said softly, stepping closer. "Can you hear me?" No answer. Only the steady rhythm of the monitor. A long, flat beep between each heartbeat. Clara let out a small sigh, half relief, half exhaustion. "You will be fine," she murmured. "You survived the storm once. You can do it again." She pulled the blanket higher around his shoulders and dimmed the lights. Outside, the rain began to fade, replaced by the faint sound of morning crickets. And though she could not explain why, Clara paused at the doorway for one last look. The man in the bed was still, his face calm now beneath the pale light. But something deep inside her whispered that his story and hers had only just begun. Morning came quietly to St. Mary's Community Hospital, the kind of small-town place where everyone knew the creak of every hallway and the sound of every shift bell. Clara Evans stood by the window of the break room, holding a paper cup of coffee gone cold. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, the kind of gray that stayed even after the storm had passed. Her reflection in the glass looked tired. The dark circles under her eyes were not from one long night, but from many. She had been working double shifts for weeks. Every paycheck went straight to her mother's medicine and the overdue bills waiting on the kitchen counter of their trailer outside town. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "You were born with a healer's heart, Clara. Never let the world harden it." That voice was the reason she was still here. Because the world had already tried to harden her once. 2 years ago, in a hospital in Dallas, Clara had done what she believed was right. She reported a senior doctor for neglecting a patient. Instead of being thanked, she was quietly let go. No one wanted trouble. No one wanted truth. Her name had become a warning whispered in hallways. That nurse, who talked too much. Now this small hospital in rural Texas was the only place that would hire her. It paid less, and the supplies were older, but at least she could work. At least she could still help someone. She looked at the clock. 7 in the morning. Her shift had technically ended an hour ago, but she could not bring herself to leave. The stranger from last night was still in room 2. He had survived the night. His pulse was steady, and yet something about him kept her uneasy. Clara poured out the coffee and decided to check on him one last time before heading home. The hallway lights flickered as she walked. She pushed open the door to room 2. The man lay exactly as before, still and pale, his chest rising gently under the blanket. The silver lighter remained on the bedside table where she had left it. She pulled his chart closer, flipping through the pages. Head injury, fractured ribs, dehydration. His blood type was rare. The lab results showed traces of sedative in his system, something not typical for a car accident victim. That detail made her pause. "Who are you, really?" she whispered again. She replaced the chart and took a clean towel to wipe his forehead. As she leaned over, a soft groan escaped his lips. His eyes fluttered for a second, then fell still again. Her heartbeat quickened. "Easy," she said gently. "You are safe. You are at St. Mary's Hospital. My name is Clara. You have been unconscious since last night." No response. Only the faint beep of the monitor answered her. Still, she felt something in the air shift like the moment before a door begins to open. A knock startled her. Dr. Harris stepped in, holding a clipboard. His voice carried the same authority it always did. "Evans, you are still here? Go home. You look exhausted." "I just wanted to make sure he was stable," Clara replied. "He is stable enough. Paramedics said he might be some ranch worker. No ID, no family, nothing. You do not need to worry so much." Clara nodded but did not move. "His blood work shows sedatives. Did you see that?" The doctor frowned. "Probably from the painkillers we administered. But the test was from before that," she said softly. He exhaled sharply. "Evans, let the lab worry about the numbers. Go home and rest. That is in order." She lowered her eyes. "Yes, doctor." When he left, she stood in silence for a long moment. Through the half-closed blinds, the morning light fell across the man's face. It softened the lines of worry around his mouth. He looked peaceful now, almost fragile. Clara reached for the lighter again, turning it between her fingers. The initials RH gleamed under the fluorescent light. Maybe it belonged to a father, a brother, or a husband. Maybe it was all he had left. She placed it carefully back on the table. Then she took a small notepad from her pocket and wrote on a sticky note. "You are not alone. You are safe now." She placed the note by his hand. As she turned to leave, she glanced once more at him. Something about this stranger pulled at her in ways she did not understand. Perhaps it was the quiet strength in his face, or perhaps it was the reminder that healing someone was never just about medicine. Outside the hospital, the sun began to break through the clouds, painting the wet road with streaks of gold. Clara walked toward the parking lot, her shoes squeaking on the floor. She was too tired to notice that behind her, inside room 2, the man's hand shifted again, slowly curling around the note she had left, as if holding on to her words. By the next morning, the storm had cleared completely. The air above the Texas plains was fresh and sharp, carrying the scent of wet soil and wild sage. Inside St. Mary's Community Hospital, the quiet hum of machines blended with the faint sound of footsteps and whispered voices. Nurse Clara Evans pushed open the door to room 2, balancing a tray with fresh bandages, a water pitcher, and a small bowl of oatmeal. The patient, the stranger from the storm, was still asleep, though his breathing had grown steadier. The color had returned to his face, and faint warmth now replaced the chill of the night before. Clara set the tray down and checked the monitors. Everything was stable. She wrote a quick note on his chart, then turned to the bedside table where the silver lighter still rested. The initials R.H. gleamed faintly in the morning light. She found herself tracing them with her thumb, wondering again what story they held. "You are holding on," she said softly. "That is a good sign." She began changing the bandages with careful precision, humming under her breath. It was an old tune her mother used to sing when Clara was a child. Something about hope, about finding light, even when everything else felt dark. After a moment, she noticed the sticky note she had left yesterday was gone. For a second, she thought the cleaning staff had removed it. But then her eyes caught a detail that made her heart skip. The note had been folded once and tucked under his pillow. He had read it. Clara froze, her fingers tightening around the fresh bandage. The realization sent a quiet thrill through her. He was waking, aware enough to move, aware enough to understand. "You can hear me, can't you?" she whispered, leaning closer. "If you can hear me, squeeze my hand." Nothing happened, but as she was about to pull away, she felt the faintest pressure, weak, uncertain, but real. Her breath caught. "That is good," she said, smiling through surprise. "You are doing just fine, one step at a time." She gently placed his hand back on the blanket. In the quiet of that moment, she realized how much it meant to see someone come back from the edge. For most people, it was just part of a job. For her, it was a small miracle. As she adjusted the blanket, the door opened behind her. A familiar voice broke the stillness. "Evans, you are here early again." It was Mrs. Ruth, the elderly volunteer who helped serve breakfast to patients. Her white hair was tucked under a pale blue cap, and her smile carried the warmth of someone who had lived through every kind of weather. "I could not sleep," Clara admitted. "Thought I would check on him before the day gets busy." Mrs. Ruth followed her gaze to the man in the bed. "Handsome one, even half dead," she teased gently. Clara gave a small laugh. "Let us just get him back on his feet before we start with compliments." Ruth placed a sandwich on the bedside table. "I will say a prayer for him, dear. Storms like that do not spare many souls." "Thank you," Clara said. When Ruth left, the room felt peaceful again. Clara sat down for a moment, resting her chin in her hands, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. The monitor beeped in rhythm with the clock on the wall. She thought of her mother again, how she used to care for stray animals, how she once told Clara that healing someone always required a small piece of your own strength. Clara spoke softly, almost like a confession. "Whoever you are, I hope you have someone waiting for you." She stood and took the bowl of oatmeal, dipping a spoon into it. "You have not eaten in 2 days," she said gently. "Let us change that." She helped him take a small sip of water with a sponge, careful not to choke him. It was slow, patient work, but she did not mind. As she wiped his lips with a soft cloth, something unexpected caught her eye, a faint bruise on his wrist, circular and dark, like the mark of a cuff or restraint. Her brows furrowed. "That is strange," she murmured. "Where did you come from, mister?" The door opened suddenly. Dr. Harris entered again, clipboard in hand. "Evans, do not overdo it. The man needs rest, not attention." Clara straightened. "He responded to movement this morning. He squeezed my hand." The doctor frowned. "Could be a reflex. Do not build hope too soon." "But he folded the note," Clara said. He looked unconvinced. "Notes do not mean much in medicine. Keep your head clear." When he left, she exhaled slowly, looking down at her patient. "Maybe not in medicine," she whispered, "but in faith, it means everything." She adjusted the blanket one last time, smoothing the fabric over his chest. The lighter caught a beam of sunlight again, flashing like a signal. Somewhere deep inside, she felt that this man was not who everyone thought he was. There was a story behind the bruises, a secret behind the engraved initials, and a reason the world had sent him to her door. For now, she would do what she always did: care, hope, and wait. Because sometimes, waiting was part of healing too. 2 days passed, and the hospital settled into its slow rhythm again. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the Texas sky wide and bright. and the smell of wild grass drifted through the open windows of St. Mary's Community Hospital. Inside room 2, the man who had once arrived broken and nameless was beginning to stir. His wounds had started to heal. The bruises on his face faded from purple to soft brown, and every morning his breathing grew stronger. Nurse Clara Evans entered quietly, carrying a tray with warm broth and a folded towel. The sunlight fell in stripes across the floor, touching the silver lighter still resting beside his bed. She placed the tray down and turned to check his pulse. That was when she noticed something different. His eyes were open. Clara froze, her hand still on his wrist. The man's gaze followed her, unfocused at first, then sharp with confusion. His lips moved as if trying to form words, but only a hoarse whisper came out. "Water," he managed to say. Clara reached for the cup, holding it to his lips. "Small sips," she said softly. "You have been unconscious for several days." He drank carefully, then leaned back, closing his eyes. "Where am I?" "You are at St. Mary's Hospital. You were in an accident. You are safe now." He nodded weakly, then looked down at his bandaged hands. "How long have I been here?" 3 days, she said. "You had head trauma and broken ribs. You are lucky to be alive." His gaze flicked to her name badge. "Clara," he said slowly, tasting the word. "You took care of me." She felt her face warm. "It is my job." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held both gratitude and disbelief. "Then you must take your job very seriously." Clara hesitated, unsure how to respond. There was something in his tone, gentle, curious, and oddly familiar. She busied herself with checking his chart. "The doctor will want to run more tests later today. Try to rest." When she turned back, he was watching her quietly. "What happened to my things?" he asked. "You had no identification," she explained. "Only this." She handed him the silver lighter. "It was in your jacket." He took it, his thumb brushing over the initials R.H. For a moment, his expression changed something like pain or recognition. But then it was gone. "Thank you," he said softly. Clara noticed his eyes glistened, though he quickly turned away. "Is there someone we should call?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, no one." The answer felt heavy. Clara wanted to ask more, but stopped herself. "Then we will make sure you are comfortable until you are ready to leave." "Why are you being so kind to me?" he asked suddenly. Clara looked at him, surprised. "Because someone once told me that kindness can save a life. Maybe tonight it saved yours." He gave a quiet laugh that turned into a cough. She steadied him, holding his shoulder. For a brief moment, their eyes met again, his tired, hers determined, and something unspoken passed between them. After a while, she dimmed the lights and left him to rest. In the hallway, the world felt softer somehow, as if something inside the hospital had shifted. Back in the room, the man still holding the lighter looked out the window at the open Texas sky. The name Clara echoed in his mind like a promise. He whispered it once, testing the sound, then closed his eyes again. Outside, the afternoon wind lifted the curtain, carrying with it the scent of rain and the faint chime of a wind bell someone had hung by the porch. It was the first peaceful sound he had heard in a long time, and for the first time in years, he let himself breathe. By the next sunrise, room 2 was filled with soft light. The man was awake now, though still weak. Clara entered quietly with a tray of breakfast and a clipboard. His eyes followed her as she arranged the meal. "You should try to eat," she said gently. "Your body needs strength." He nodded and lifted the spoon with effort. "You talk like someone who has seen too many people give up." "I have," she answered simply. "But I have also seen people fight their way back." He looked at her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I suppose I should be one of them." The sound of his voice was steadier now. Clara helped him sit up, tucking a pillow behind his back. "You are healing faster than expected," she said. "That is a good sign." He glanced toward the window. "I should be dead," he murmured. "I remember the crash, the rain, then nothing. Someone was looking out for you," she said softly. Their eyes met. For a brief second, something like understanding passed between them, a quiet recognition of pain carried and shared. Later that afternoon, Clara brought him outside to the small hospital garden. The air was warm, carrying the scent of pine and soil. He sat on a bench, eyes half closed, feeling the sunlight touch his face for the first time in days. "Do you always bring patients out here?" he asked. "Only the ones who need reminding that the world is still beautiful," she replied. He chuckled softly. "Then I am lucky." Clara smiled. "Lucky has nothing to do with it. You are alive because you did not give up." He turned his head toward her voice. "And you? Have you ever wanted to give up?" She looked at her hands, silent for a moment. "Sometimes. But every time I think of quitting, someone walks in who needs me more than I need rest." He studied her face, the calm strength behind her words. "You have a gift, Clara. Not everyone can make pain feel lighter." She looked at him and said quietly, "Healing someone is never just about medicine. Sometimes it is about hope." The wind moved gently through the trees. He nodded, still holding the lighter in his hand. "Then maybe hope is what brought you to me." Clara smiled, not answering, but deep inside she felt it too, the sense that their meeting was no accident, but the beginning of something neither of them yet understood. A week later, the stranger was walking again. The bruises had faded, the bandages were fewer, and the lines of pain around his eyes had softened. Every morning he made it a little farther down the hospital corridor with Clara by his side, steadying him when his legs trembled. "You are getting stronger," she said, matching her pace to his. He smiled, breathing heavily. "Only because you will not let me quit." "That is what I am here for," she replied. When they reached the end of the hallway, they paused near the window overlooking the open fields. The sun was setting, painting the sky with gold and violet. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them had become something warm, a space filled with unspoken trust. Clara looked at him. "You still have not told me your name." He hesitated, staring at the horizon. "Jack," he said finally. "Just Jack." The answer felt incomplete, but she let it be. "Well, Jack, your progress is remarkable." He turned toward her, a faint smile touching his lips. "You make it sound easy, but it was your voice that kept me from letting go. I remember hearing you talk while I was unconscious. You told me I was safe." Clara blinked in surprise. "You heard that?" "I did." It was like light breaking through the dark. Her throat tightened. "I am glad it helped." They walked back slowly. At the door to his room, he paused. "When this is over, when I leave here, I want to do something to thank you." "There is no need," she said. "Just get better. That is enough for me." He nodded, though the look in his eyes said otherwise. "You have a way of making people believe again." That night, as Clara finished her shift, she passed his room once more. The lamp was still on, casting a soft glow across the bed. Jack sat up reading a small booklet she had left earlier, words about healing and courage. When she saw that, she smiled. In the quiet of that hospital corridor, something gentle had begun to grow between them, something steady, fragile, and real. Neither of them said it out loud, but both could feel it. Healing had found more than one patient inside those walls. 2 more weeks passed, and Jack was almost ready to be discharged. He could walk on his own now, though a faint limp remained. The nurses teased that he was becoming part of the hospital furniture. Clara smiled at their jokes, but deep down, she felt a strange heaviness. Soon, he would leave. That morning, she brought his final test results and found him sitting by the window, dressed in clean jeans and a simple shirt that one of the volunteers had brought. The silver lighter rested on the windowsill beside him. He was staring outside, lost in thought. "You are almost free," Clara said cheerfully. "Your scans look good, and Dr. Harris says you can go home by the weekend." He did not turn. "Home," he repeated quietly. "Funny how that word feels like a place I do not know anymore." Clara's smile softened. "You must have someone waiting for you." He shook his head. "Not in the way people think. The truth is, I was not in that accident by chance." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her, his eyes suddenly sharper. "There are things about me that I cannot explain yet, but I will tell you this: someone wanted to keep me quiet, and they almost succeeded." The room fell silent. Clara tried to make sense of his words. "Are you saying someone hurt you on purpose?" He hesitated. "Yes, and I cannot prove it yet, but I will." Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You should tell the police." "I cannot," he said firmly. "Not until I am certain who was behind it. Until then, it is safer if no one knows who I really am." She looked at him, confused but trusting. "Then at least tell me the truth. Who are you, Jack? He looked down at his hands. Jack is not my real name. He paused, then met her gaze. My name is Richard Hale Rutherford. The name meant nothing to her at first, until she noticed the engraved initials on the lighter. Her breath caught. R.H., she whispered. He nodded. Rutherford Health. The foundation that funds this hospital. I built it years ago to help small towns like this. But lately, the people running it have turned it into something else, something corrupt. I came here undercover to see it for myself. Someone found out. The crash was no accident. Clara's mind raced. You mean Dr. Harris? I do not know yet, he interrupted. But someone inside this hospital does not want me to wake up. She stared at him, struggling to process everything. Why tell me this? Because I trust you, he said quietly. You saved my life. Twice. First when you treated me, and again when you believed I was more than just a broken stranger. Clara's pulse quickened. If what you are saying is true, you are still in danger. I know, he said, glancing toward the door. That is why I need your help. Her voice trembled. What can I possibly do? He took her hand gently. Stay near. Keep your eyes open. There are people who would rather see me disappear for good. Clara nodded slowly, her heart torn between fear and faith. Then I will stay, she said. Whatever happens, I will not walk away. Oh. Outside the window, a storm began to gather again over the Texas hills. The wind pressed against the glass, and for the first time, Clara felt the chill of something bigger than the two of them, a truth that could change everything. The next day began with a heavy stillness that did not feel like peace. Clouds pressed low over the town, and the air inside St. Mary's Hospital carried the uneasy tension of a place waiting for something to happen. Clara Evans walked quickly down the hall, her pulse steady but her mind racing. After Richard's revelation the night before, she had not slept. Every word he had said echoed in her head about the corruption, the betrayal, the danger still lurking inside these walls. She had promised to stay near him, and she meant it. When she entered room 2, Richard was sitting upright, reading through a stack of papers she did not recognize. You should be resting, she said softly. He looked up. These reports confirm what I feared. Money meant for patient care is missing. Someone rerouted the funds months ago. Clara's stomach twisted. Who could do something like that? Richard hesitated. Dr. Harris oversees the budgets here. If he is involved, it explains why he was so eager to dismiss my case. Before Clara could respond, the door opened sharply. Dr. Harris stood there, his expression controlled, but cold. Good morning, he said flatly. I see our mystery patient is well enough to investigate hospital finances. Richard's voice was calm. You've been busy, Doctor. Harris's eyes flicked between them. Mr. Rutherford, or should I still call you Jack? I did some checking of my own. Clara's breath caught. You knew? Oh, I know everything, Harris said, stepping closer. You see, I am the one who found out about your little inspection trip. You should have stayed in your penthouse instead of playing hero among the poor. Oh, Richard tensed, but his tone stayed steady. So it was you. Harris smiled thinly. An unfortunate accident, nothing personal. But now that you are awake, I will have to find another way to keep you quiet. Clara moved instinctively, placing herself between them. If you hurt him, everyone will know, she said, her voice trembling but clear. Harris sneered. No one will believe a nurse with a ruined record. You think your word means something? Her hands shook, but she stood her ground. It means enough to save a man's life before. It will again. Richard pressed the emergency call button behind her. The alarm echoed down the corridor. Footsteps approached orderlies, a security guard. Harris's expression changed from arrogance to alarm. He tried to slip past them, but 2 staff members blocked his path. Get your hands off me, he shouted as they restrained him. Richard exhaled, shoulders sinking. It is over, he murmured. But Clara shook her head. Not yet. The police will need proof. She picked up the folder of reports from the table. These will be enough. Within minutes, the chaos subsided. Harris was escorted out of the building, cursing under his breath. Richard leaned back against the bed, exhausted but free. Clara stayed beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. You could have been killed, she whispered. So could you, he replied, but you stayed. I told you I would. Oh. For a long time, they sat in silence, the sound of the storm outside rolling through the fields. Lightning flashed once through the window, illuminating their faces, hers steady, his filled with quiet gratitude. When the thunder faded, Richard turned to her and said softly, "You did not just save my life, Clara. You reminded me why I built this place in the first place, to fight for people who still believe in what is right." She smiled faintly. "Then let us start by making this hospital honest again." Outside, the storm began to break, and for the first time in days, sunlight touched the edge of the sky. 1 month later, St. Mary's Community Hospital no longer felt like the same place. The hallways that once echoed with tired footsteps now carried the sound of new hope. The investigation into Dr. Harris had revealed years of hidden fraud, and with Richard Hale Rutherford's testimony, the truth had spread far beyond the town. The Rutherford Health Foundation took full control of the hospital again, promising to rebuild what had been lost. But the change that mattered most was not written in reports or court papers. It was written in the small acts of kindness that began to fill every corner of the building: the nurses who smiled more freely, the patients who were treated with dignity, the quiet sense that justice had finally returned. Clara Evans walked through the garden where she and Richard had first talked about hope. The air was bright and warm. The sound of wind chimed soft against the breeze. She carried a small stack of patient charts, but her steps were slower now, unhurried. For the first time in years, she did not feel the weight of fear or doubt. Behind her, a familiar voice spoke. "You still work too much." She turned and saw Richard standing near the path, dressed in a simple white shirt, the sunlight catching the edge of his hair. His injuries were long healed, though he still moved carefully, as if aware of how fragile life could be. "You are back," she said, smiling. "I thought you were in Dallas." "I was," he said, walking closer. "But I could not stay away. I wanted to see the place that reminded me what healing really means." "Oh." He reached into his pocket and took out something wrapped in a small velvet pouch. "I have something for you." Clara frowned playfully. "You already gave me enough headaches to last a lifetime." He laughed, then placed the pouch in her hand. Inside was a silver wind chime, delicate and simple, engraved with the words, "For the one who never gave up." She looked up, her eyes shimmering. "It is beautiful." He nodded. "It is more than that. It is a promise. The hospital will have a new wing built in your honor. It will be called the Clara Wing." Clara blinked in disbelief. "Richard, you do not have to." "I do," he said softly. "You saved me when I had nothing left but anger and regret. You reminded me that real healing starts with compassion." For a moment, neither spoke. The garden seemed to hold its breath. Then Clara said quietly, "You were the one who taught me that hope can return, even when it looks impossible." "Oh." He took her hand, the same hand that had once steadied his trembling body in the hospital corridor. "Maybe we taught each other." The sound of the wind chime filled the air between them. It was light, pure, and full of promise. A nurse passing by called out, "Miss Evans, the new patients have arrived." Clara smiled at Richard. "Duty calls." He smiled back. "I will be here when you are done." As she walked away, the wind lifted her hair and carried the gentle sound of the chime across the garden. Richard watched her go, his heart steady, his soul quiet for the first time in years. In the distance, the church bells of the town began to ring. The sky was clear, the horizon wide, and St. Mary's Hospital stood tall again, not as a place of pain, but as a place of second chances. And somewhere between the hum of the wind and the echo of the bells, the truth settled gently around them both. He had come to be healed, but love had healed them both.